they can watch it there. I'm just going to put that in the chat.
Cool.
All right. Always fun. I once had one where I had 1,000 people and the whole thing crashed.
Really?
I had to try to start a new stream on the fly while interviewing. I think we had like 3 or 4 guests. Not
Oh, no. That's a nightmare.
So it happens occasionally. It's been a long time since I've had something like this happen, but what do you do?
Yeah,
Right, so
no
getting
worries.
back to things, you talked a little bit about FP&A and XP&A, and I'd love to know from your experience, what do you see as the biggest difference between kind of XP&A and what we'll call traditional FP&A? How would you say you think about it?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is that traditional FP&A still very much lives within the finance team. The finance team are very much the gatekeepers of all of the sort of financial data and financial numbers, targets, etc. Whereas with XP&A, each business team is kind of directly involved and kind of owning their own sets of numbers, their own plans, their own forecasts. They're not having to go to the finance team every time they want to see how they're doing against their targets, or every time they want to see how much budget they have remaining. They can actually answer those questions themselves. And what that actually means is that the different teams around the business are much more sort of engaged in the actual performance of the business. They're much sort of closer to that, and it really just helps everyone make better decisions. And so, the way we've tried to sort of solve this problem with our product is that we've kind of built it in a way that still gives it all of the power of some of these traditional enterprise FP&A systems, but packaged in a much more sort of lightweight way. That means that these business teams will actually be able to use the product and will actually log in, rather than it being the kind of product that they kind of dread having to go into this system and end up just not really using it.
So if I'm hearing it, the goal is really to have kind of the whole business be able to use the tool, not just finance, really to kind of help break down those silos.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And so how have you seen that working kind of in practical terms of just helping that relationships between finance and the operational departments? Because I've experienced that. I think most people have experienced there being a real challenge of getting the business to use these tools. So any kind of practical examples or things you could share that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of our customers is a kind of like a mortgage provider. And so, as you can imagine, they do a lot of sort of quite complex modeling for things like retention curves for all of their different mortgage products and, scenarios. Obviously, scenario analysis is very important for that kind of business where you're doing a lot of lending. And this was really the kind of stuff that previously wasn't actually even possible for them, just because of the level of complexity that it would have been like in spreadsheets. But now with our XP&A product, the first thing is that they can actually build all these retention curves, retention analysis across all of their different products. But then they can also kind of use these to create sort of tailored dashboards and tailored reports for the different product owners that are owning these different products. And so they've kind of gone from not even being able to do this analysis to being able to do the analysis and have live dashboards that are viewed by their product owners to keep up to date with how their products are actually performing.
Got it. So really that kind of integration and ability to see the reporting, see everything in one place. And I think you mentioned lightweight tool, something that's easy to log into.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you say lightweight tool, is the tool kind of designed similar to a spreadsheet, with dashboards or gander? How do I think about XP&A? Like, someone logs in, I'm a finance person. What makes it unique?
Yeah, I think we've I would characterize our approach compared to others as really, we kind of let you do things on the fly. I think with traditional FP&A tools, it's very configuration heavy. It's very configuration first. Before you can do anything in the product, you have to kind of know upfront, what things you're going to build, what your dimensions are going to be, how everything's going to be set up, all these different relationships. And so you have to configure a million things. And at that point, you can start building stuff. You can start building your plans and charts and reports. But the bad news is that once you then sort of need to change something, if your business changes the way it operates, if you got something wrong, if you decide to plan in a slightly different way, you then have to go back and reconfigure things. And so you kind of get stuck in this sort of endless cycle of just configuring stuff. Whereas with our product, what I mean when I say lightweight is that we don't force you to do any of this configuration up front. You can start building. And as you realize that, hey, I want to see this thing broken down by this dimension, or I want to slice this thing in a certain way, you can create those structures and those relationships on the fly. And you never kind of get stuck in a dead end where you then have to kind of backtrack and reconfigure loads of stuff.
Got it. No, that's helpful. And I'd love to kind of move for a minute to think a subject that it's sometimes feels like all we ever talk about these days, right? I don't even all I have to say is that I bet you could guess where I'm going.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Artificial intelligence, Gen AI, machine learning. So first let's start with how do you think about that kind of, for FP&A professionals and what are you seeing as the use cases today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I get any points for saying that. I think AI is definitely going to change the way we work, all of us, including FP&A professionals. I think tracking what's happening in the world of like software engineering and software engineering tools is actually a really great way to understand what's going to be happening in other tools for other teams years before it actually does. Software engineers, they love new tech, and first and foremost, they use that new tech to make their own lives easier. And that's what we're already seeing with AI. I think it's already completely changed how the vast majority of the top engineering teams write code. And so engineers, they typically use the tech to solve their own problems, and then that trickles down over the next few years to the rest of us, on the finance team, on the sales team, and so on. And so just from seeing what's been happening in the software engineering world over the last couple of years, it's really, really obvious that everyone is going to be working quite differently very soon. I think the biggest thing is that we'll be able to kind of focus much less on trying to force the computer to do kind of very specific things, and we'll be able to sort of work at a much higher level of abstraction. So just to kind of give you an example, if you want to sort of understand, hey, why were these numbers different than we expected? In sort of traditional FP&A world, pre-AI, you'd have this question in your head, why were these numbers different than expected? You then have to kind of translate your question into a series of actions that you need to do in the computer. And so you'd know that, okay, I need to kind of open up this tab here to go into my transactions in my ERP. And then I need to kind of like cross-reference that with some other thing or, whatever it might be. And so you're not just thinking about the business and what's going on. You're also then having to translate that into, probably like dozens of different actions to get the tools and to get the data to answer the question. Whereas I think with AI, the gap between you just sort of thinking about your business and trying to analyze it in your head and the computer doing the things that it needs to do for you to do that, that gap is becoming a lot smaller. And so some of the stuff that we're already working on in our XP&A product is things like a sort of AI modeling agent. So as you build your model in XP&A, the AI will sort of proactively suggest the next few lines of your model. And so it's not that you have to think, okay, I want to calculate my profit margin, therefore I need to write this kind of formula, and I need to remember that if I, in case I'm dividing by 0, I need to handle this kind of error or whatever, right? You're not going to have to do that translation step. The AI will understand that, okay, the natural next calculation is to calculate the profit margin, and the AI will understand exactly what formula it needs to write to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how far we're coming and exciting. I know I've played with AI quite a bit, and Excel is one area where it helps write formulas. I'm sure you can get the same with LucaNet and your XP&A platform, and like I said, kind of helping where to go next. So
Yep.
definitely going to change a lot of things for a lot of us. What about, I'm curious, machine learning and kind of algorithms? How are you thinking about those? I mean, we often talk a lot of Gen AI and that whole area, but any thoughts on that side as kind of predictive analytics and using some of that to help forecast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is something that we've been working on actually very recently. We've just launched this feature in the product. I think what Gen AI is very good at is dealing with things that involve lots of text. and just having a really deep understanding of all of this text. It's been trained on the whole internet basically. And for any kind of text-based task, writing formulas, writing code, analyzing documents, I think the Gen AI tools, the LLMs, are very good at dealing with that. I think where the slightly more, I mean, we'll call it old school. It's still very much cutting edge, but the more sort of traditional machine learning algorithms based approach is still very helpful when it comes to time series analysis. So if you have a bunch of historical data, whether that's for your revenue or your sales or whatever it might be, lots and lots of algorithms have been developed over many years that can look at that data, figure out patterns, and forecast that into the future for you. And actually, we just today launched our own kind of predictive time series forecasting function within FP&A. And so, if you have let's say 24 months of actuals for a particular line item in your model, you can simply use this forecast function. You can just type in the word forecast and open bracket. And you can sort of feed in this historical data, whether 12, 24, or even more data points. And the algorithm will automatically kind of forecast whatever line item it is going out in the future.
Okay, cool. And it's kind of funny thinking when you mentioned ML and old school, right? Not usually what you think, but it's amazing how quick it's all kind of changing.
It's crazy, yeah.
So I'd love to know kind of what's your vision for a Lucan X XP&A solution? Kind of what's coming next, and where do you see things going?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our big focuses is really to kind of bring XP&A into the whole LucaNet platform. We're now live in the LucaNet platform alongside LucaNet's other tools, and LucaNet has a handful of different tools. And we're really kind of betting on this platform approach. I think the software companies that are just providing, one point solution for one part of what a team needs to do, I think they're really going to struggle over the next few years. I think LucaNet's in a very strong position. They have already had a very strong core product around consolidation and financial reporting, which is obviously very important for finance teams. Since the Causal acquisition, we now have this great operational planning product. And so really tying all of these products together so that they work really seamlessly with shared sets of dimensions, shared permissions, all of the kind of stuff you'd expect from a true platform. We're really taking a big bet on this platform approach. And I think generally in the software space, we're seeing more of that. If you look at, for example, HR software or sales software, I think gone are the days of the 2013, 2014 kind of era where everyone was happy having like a million different SaaS tools. I think generally people now want one tool. They can do all the different things they need. They want to be able to kind of grow with a vendor over time. Rather than have to have 5, 6 different vendors, and so the platform approach is going to be very big for us, and I think that actually positions LucaNet in a very good place to actually sort of leverage all of this AI technology that's going on, because it means we just have access to a lot more data and a lot more context. And so if you're using one product, both for your consolidation and for your planning, then obviously all of that context can be shared, and the AI just has a lot more to work with. And so I think these platforms, when supercharged with AI, will kind of really change the way we work, and that's kind of the bet that we're making at LucaNet.
Yeah, I get it. And we're seeing a lot, more and more kind of that platform approach, like you mentioned, and one of the huge benefits of that is all the data that sits in one place, right? Because the more you silo your data across the company, the harder it becomes. And we're
Yeah.
seeing more and more things being done to try to bring that all back together. And so it's exciting from that perspective. But I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk a little more broadly. We have some FP&A professionals out there listening. What advice would you give them if they're trying to, really have a more holistic company-wide XP&A process? They're trying to integrate things and get away from kind of that siloed financial planning. Any practical advice you would offer them on how to get started on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, I would recommend that they buy LucaNet, LucaNet XP&A, and other products in the LucaNet suite. So I think that's step one. And then I'd say step two is to really think about the kind of like the user experience for the people outside of the finance team. I think ultimately the finance team is there to serve the rest of the company, and I think when finance teams aren't really thinking about, okay, what work am I creating for the head of sales or the heads of departments? What am I actually asking these people to do? Is it easy for them to be able to give me the information I need? Is it easy for them to be able to access all this stuff? I think thinking from almost as if the finance team is kind of a product that the rest of the company is using. You want that product to be easy to use, intuitive, and so on. You don't want there to be lots of friction. You don't want it to be really clunky. And so just think about kind of the experience that the finance team is creating for the rest of the business. And if you can provide a good experience, then the rest of the company is going to be much more engaged, which is what you want.
Yeah, I really like that part about, company will be much more engaged, finding those ways and really thinking about the business, not just, the finance needs. Because the more you think about your end user, it's just like with software, right? The more you think about the customer than what you want, the more
Yeah,
likely they are to use the tool and to be involved. So I really
absolutely.
appreciate you joining me today. I was looking at LinkedIn. I don't think it ever started responding again. Locked this
Yeah,
out. We're still buffering. So I'll ask if anyone has any questions, but I'm not sure if we'll get any today with kind of the challenges we had. So what we'll do, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I know we have a few people that switched over to YouTube. Don't know if we have anyone that it's working for on LinkedIn, but if you see any questions, we'll take those. If not, we'll go ahead and close for now. And we'll look to maybe redo this another time when technology doesn't give us the challenges we did. But we did get it all recorded, so that will be an option for people. And thank you for joining me, Tamir. If you can, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. If you can just hold on 1 minute.
awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.